Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome to a brand new video in the technically Dishonored lore series. Now, the reason I say technically is because today is going to be a very special episode. Now, just like the previous crossover episode I did, which I just kind of gave away as to what this video was, but just like I said, it is a crossover episode. And just like the previous one, this one is going to involve two different series on the channel coming together. But in this case, it's not just the series, and rather it's actually two different games as well. See, there's recently been two games that I've been getting very much into. Like I was already into them a lot. I played a lot of Prey and a lot of Dishonored in the past, but I've been getting into them again. And in the process of doing so, and in the process of finishing the expansion to Dishonored 2, I learned a lot of new stuff. And what I noticed is that in this new expansion for Dishonored, it's actually Death of the Outsider, or it was new a while back, but in this new expansion, we learn a lot of things that we didn't know before, and in specific, we learn about how there's things in the Dishonored universe that are eerily similar, including Easter eggs, to things in the Prey universe. And I'll discuss it in detail as we go forward in this video, but it's led me to the conclusion that perhaps, just maybe, ignoring a lot of other facts, that the Dishonored universe is the same one as the Prey universe. A potential theory that could have tons of implications and even crazier results, if it's true, which I doubt. So without further ado, let's get right into the video. Now, like with the last 3-ish videos I think I've made, except for maybe the last Prey video I made, which was scripted, this one is going to be very much unscripted, simply because I don't have the time to write down scripts due to college and getting home really late. So, as a result, everything's off the top of my head, and if I make mistakes that don't exactly align with things that happen, it's probably because I didn't have a lot of time to think it over when it comes to checking my sources. However, everything I say in this video isn't just me blabbering about stuff. It's definitely things I've played through. I very much remember what I played. However, I am human, so I may mess up on certain things. But with that said, I think I should start this out by just saying why I think this is the case. Now, as I said in the intro, Dishonored 2, a while after it came out, had a DLC called Death of the Outsider. And in that DLC, this is obviously a massive spoiler. Please don't watch this video if you don't like spoilers for Prey and Dishonored 2 and its DLC. And I do recommend that you click off if you don't actually want to be spoiled on these, because they're pretty cool. And they have a lot of implications. So getting back into it, the main thing that made me kind of lean towards this was obviously the Death of the Outsider. And the reason for that is that the plot of the game revolves around, obviously, killing the outsider, but the way you go about doing it is very, very different. And in the process of killing, or at least getting rid of the outsider, because there's always a non-lethal option, you learn about a lot of things involving the Void. Now, I will delve into this later in a potentially different series, but to sum it up, basically the outsider is someone who was killed, but right before he died, technically he wasn't killed. It's kind of confusing. I didn't fully understand it myself, but it is very cool if you start, because I attempted to apply a lot of my Elder Scrolls knowledge towards it in terms of how you go about interpreting it, which I just assumed was that, oh, he wasn't really killed because the twin-bladed knife that killed him just ended up making it so that he could never die and he never ever had the chance of being alive. So he fell into the state of limbo, and it's a long story, but in general, basically the outsider is dreaming. The things that we see of the outsider is that he's dreaming. And what we learn as we go through it is that the Void, at least from how it looks like, as well as all the powers that we see and that we've played through with Dishonored, are eerily similar to the powers of the Typhon and Prey. And in general, the Outsider himself is eerily similar, just in how he came to be, to a lot of the concepts in Prey itself. Like, for example, the whole concept of a dream can be very much compared to the concept of the simulation, where you're essentially playing God to the character who's in the simulation, at least in Prey, which is technically supposed to be you. But in the case of Dishonored, the Outsider's kind of playing God. But honestly, those are very, very small similarities, like, because actually in my layout, I kind of labeled this section about general similarities, but there's that very small similarity, which you could even say isn't a similarity, it's just me kind of trying to attribute one thing to the other. But the real stuff starts happening around the point where we learn about these things called the Envisioned. Now, in Death of the Outsider, we learn that basically there's this group of cultists called the Eyeless that created the Outsider a couple thousand years ago. But as a result, I think they might have had to kill the old god, or they replaced him simply after he died. But as a result, they gained immortality at the price that over time they become less and less human and more void-like, as in their blood is no longer blood, it becomes like stone, and eventually, after thousands of years presumably, they cease to even look human. They look like basically phantoms, except instead of having this weird gelatinous coating, it's all floating void stone, which like shivers and stuff. But the thing about it is that this Envisioned is what they're called, actually. The Eyeless become the Envisioned after they become like that. Is that they're very similar to the Typhon in behavior, obviously not origin, but in terms of behavior, in terms of powers, in terms of how they look, even to some extent in things they do, like the actions they have, as well as their origin, which is that they start out as humans and obviously through different means become this basically monster. But it doesn't end there. For example, the Phantoms, getting into a bit more detail, the Phantoms can teleport around really quickly. That's because of them basically vibrating molecules in their body or something along those lines, and changing air molecules and just dashing through. They're just moving very fast by dashing in short amounts. And that's exactly what the Envisioned do. They have almost all the same powers that you do when it comes to things like the ability like Blink. And they dash around, but it's massive. They have massive jumps, like around corners where typically you couldn't even see around, and it's half the map that they jump across. And that's just one of the similarities. On top of that, they also have this very, like, we can't see you unless you are in the void. And what I see that as is, at least to some extent, that they, kind of just like the Typhon, don't really see you. You have to either make noise or do something to catch their attention. Otherwise, they don't even know you exist up until they get close enough to you, or they sense you, or they hear you. So the sheer fact that they're very similar in how they behave and just from how they look is it's very reminiscent of Typhon and Phantom in general. And the fact that the appearance is so much alike is definitely, in my opinion, not a coincidence. Because both games were made by Arcane, and both properties are Arcane's, Prey and Dishonored. So, by having similarities in just how one of the enemies look like, it implies a lot about what the potential universe is. And obviously you could argue a lot of things about this, like, oh, it's just them paying homage to another studio. Yeah, sure, maybe, it might be. But me being the person I am and just digging into things without any real reason to dig into them, thought maybe this means more. And this is where the kind of generalized theory comes into play, which is that perhaps, because it's actually not fully mine, I kind of took pieces and bits of people from the r/Dishonored and r/Prey Discord servers and kind of pieced it together. But in general, my theory, or at least the generalized theory that I've kind of pulled together, is that perhaps Prey is actually the Dishonored universe in the distant past. And that the world we experience in Dishonored is really just what would happen to the human world after the influence of the Typhon on Earth. Because as we see at the end of Prey, the Typhon basically end up merging with Earth. They make it their own. So who's to say that over millions and millions of years, or even thousands of years, we don't know how long it is, the Typhon just didn't create their own realm. For all we know, they could have had their own realm to begin with. And who's to say that they didn't change and evolve to adapt to this world in a way that ended up making them nothing like they were before? And who's to say, actually there are a lot of people who would object this, but there's always the implication that perhaps the Typhon are really just what the Eyeless became, or what the Void is. Because not only is the same kind of black substance, and obviously it changes properties from becoming kind of gelatinous and liquidy to becoming this hard substance, but as the way it's described in Prey, it's all three sort of forms of matter at once. Well, technically there's four, but it's three forms of matter at once, so who's to say it wouldn't change properties as the Typhon developed and adapts to their environment? And what my theory basically, or at least my hypothesis, kind of puts together is that maybe, just maybe, this is them in the future after everything's just been changed. Now that said, it's pretty far-fetched, but it would go a long ways in explaining the kind of reversal of human culture and how they basically have to start from the beginning again and slowly rise back up to the Industrial Revolution and things along those lines. As well as all the weird anomalies like magic, which I doubt is actually magic. The Void has to have some concrete evidence, because people are able to reach it physically, so it must be real. And as we learn with Prey, it's not just magic, it's definitely something that we can measure. And the marks, they might just be an integrated form of like circuitry, or maybe biological stuff that the Typhon incorporated into themselves, because the Typhon is a massive bioorganism that constantly adapts and changes. But that said, everything taken down, there's also the potential theory that it's all just a massive simulation, just like how Prey was. And this may all just be one big simulation being done to see what would happen in the future if the world of Prey became taken over by the Typhon. And that's in my opinion, that's more of a cop-out than trying to craft a theory around Typhon adapting. But nonetheless, it exists. On top of that, if you may not believe my theory, because it is pretty bare bones at the moment, and being off the top of my head, it's obviously going to develop, and I may even cover it in the future when I cover things like the Outsider and just the generalized Typhon video I'm going to make in the future. But for now, it's basically the concept that the Typhon are perhaps the reason that the Dishonored world exists, because they altered it so greatly. And that would explain things like Pandacia being a continent, why the Isles are the only thing left with humans on them that we know of, because obviously water levels would rise, because as we know, that's happening in our world right now. So maybe a lot of things that happen in our world could potentially lead to the world in Dishonored. And all of it kind of aligns in a way that is eerily familiar, and it just gets an itch on me, and I'm thinking that maybe it really is the same universe, just way out in the future. That said, there's also more to this, and it's not my theory though. It's more along the lines of kind of like Easter eggs that Arcane threw, or at least one Easter egg, which is that in Dishonored, Death of the Outsider to be exact, the expansion, or the standalone game, there's actually a lockbox that we can find in a bank named after a guy named Morgan Yu, which, surprise surprise, is the main character of Prey. So maybe there is a connection. And I know it's obviously an Easter egg, but the fact that the Asian names like Shan Yun or Morgan Yu exists within the Dishonored universe in a place where we don't really see a lot of Asian people, because as described, basically all of the Isles is basically just European countries. So how do other ethnicities even get there? Which makes me think maybe that's like humanity's last retreat. That's maybe where they escaped. Anyways, I'm getting kind of off topic, but that's one of the extra little things they threw in there. Now, like I said before I bring this video to an end, this is all just purely conjecture. Everything about this conjecture. I really don't know enough right now at this current point to determine whether everything I'm saying is completely true. And I'll be upfront about it completely. But that said, if it is true, and this is me kind of wrapping up the video, then maybe Arcane has been doing this for the rest of their video games. Maybe they really have been kind of building up to this combined massive universe that's just separated by millions of years or thousands of years. In which case, this would be amazing. I would love that. That would be so cool. The fact that things like science became magic, and things like technology went back in time to the point where they were basically the Stone Age. And everything about it would mean so much for both universes, because then, I mean, it would be a pretty grim ending to the Prey universe, but it would mean that in the end there was hope, and that the people were able to adapt and learn about the Void, or learn about the Typhon, and able to technically conquer it, because there are moments where we're able to enter the Void, and there's people who are figuring out how to enter the Void in Dishonored. But nonetheless, I think, no matter what the case is, the fact that it was done and all these similarities exist is pretty cool, and I hope Arcane does it in the future. So with that, thanks for watching the video. I know that a lot of you guys want to keep seeing like scripted content again, and I'll try that with the Prey video that'll be coming out in a while. But for now, I really, I've been trying to adapt to college life again. It's very hard. My schedule is, I have like 7 or 10, well, not 10. I have like 7 or 8 hour gaps between classes. I commute, so it's pretty hard. But I've been trying, and hopefully eventually I'll be back to straight up scripted content, and I'd love that, because I really do want to continue this theory some more and build on it. Which actually means I don't know what I'm going to label this video as, because if I'm going to continue it, who knows what this is going to be called. Anyways, thanks for watching the video. You know what to do. If you liked the video, like it. If you hated it, dislike it. Subscribe if you haven't, because I make this kind of stuff all the time. For now, this is kind of a low point where I'm not doing extremely high quality scripted content. I'm really just doing, well, I wouldn't say it's not as high quality, because I do spend a lot of time on footage. This is not the peak of my channel. I can definitely do better. So if you liked what you saw, then I guess you'll love anything else I do, because it only gets better from here. So thanks for watching once again, and just remember that it's all just something involving the Outsider, twin-bladed knives, and mind games. Uyo out.